Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Spiritual Transformer. So, today I want to talk about everybody's favorite subject, God. Or, if that triggers too much, then the universe, source energy, spirit, whatever you want to call it. I'm probably going to call it like all three or four of those things, just on a rotation, maybe. I don't know. I'll have to see. But yeah, today I want to talk about God because despite the fact that I'm not Catholic, my parents decided to send me to a Catholic school. So I'm actually kind of well versed in the idea of God, what's written in the Bible. Well, maybe not that well versed, because once I went out of high school, I kind of, never went back into the religious aspect of my education. But while I was in school, in Catholic school, one of the things they taught me was, I guess, Jesus' two rules in the New Testament. So in the Old Testament, there was the Ten Commandments. I'm pretty sure most people watching would be familiar with that. But what I was taught in school is that Jesus, in the New Testament, he had his own commandments or rules, and there's really only two of them. So the first rule is to love God with all your heart, all your being. And the second one is to love thy neighbor as you would love thyself. So those are the two. So instead of 10, he kind of boiled it down to two. Now, the second rule, so to speak, loving your neighbor as you would love yourself, or treat your neighbor as you yourself would like to be treated, is kind of really easy to understand. I mean, we can all put ourselves in someone else's shoes and just pretend to be them for a moment, and we can kind of understand how we would like to treat them, and we understand how we ourselves like to be treated. So it's really easy to understand that second rule, that second principle. But the first one is a little odd for me, at the very least. What does it mean to love God, like with all your being? Like, what is that? And why is that so important? It's so easy to understand, loving your neighbor as you would love yourself, because we're all humans. We understand that. But the first one, I don't know why. And later on in my seeking experience, or on my spiritual path, I learned that, well, God or the universe or spirit or what have you doesn't need anything from anybody. God doesn't need anything because God is like everything. Everything here is made out of like God energy because God created everything. I don't think there's anybody who can dispute that. The universe is the universe. Source energy created everything. So why would source or spirit want anybody to love them? They certainly don't need to be loved. They are love. They are everything. And it's only recently that I came to the conclusion that when Jesus is saying, and this is just my thought, so I have no idea what Jesus actually thinks. But I think what Jesus is trying to say when he says to love God is basically shorthand for loving everything. Everything, including you, yourself. So to me, I think that it makes a lot of sense because God created everything. So when Jesus says to love God, you are basically loving everything he created. Now, there's another principle in spirituality that I've learned, and that is we are also creator beings ourselves. In fact, many spiritual teachers would say we create our own reality. Everything in our reality that we can see, hear, taste, touch, smell, we created it. So everything I see in this room, like, technically I created because I am a creator being as well. So you've got two kind of contradictory ideas here. There's God as the creator and you as the creator. But God also created you. So what the heck? So once again, going back to loving God makes kind of makes a bit of sense in a weird contradictory sort of way. God doesn't need to love, but you do. You do, and so do all the things that you create. But because God creates through us, if God creates through us and we create using the power of God, then if we're all creative beings. Then by loving God, we are basically sending out a signal to the universe and having it bounce back and loving us in return. I know what I just said is kind of a little weird. It's kind of a mix of spiritual teachings here and there, but imagine Jesus trying to teach this, and he's basically saying, oh yeah, rule number one is to love the sky, to love the clouds, to love your parents, to love your sister, to love your brother, to love your husband, to love your wife, to love your child, to love your dog, to love your cat, to love your couch, to love your computer, to love your home, to love your job, to love your grandmother. I mean, imagine Jesus said that. Like, he basically says, to love everything. I think that's what he really means when he says love God, because God is everything and God created everything. And us as creative beings, we create everything through God. Well, God creates through us. And so, in a sense, loving God is also about appreciation. And that's another thing that's being taught in the spiritual community, the idea of gratitude. So when you love something, I think that is inclusive of like appreciating it. So when I say I love my wife, I also means that I appreciate her. Like, love is just that big, right? It doesn't really make sense if I say I love I love my wife, but I don't appreciate her. Like, does that make any sense at all? No. So when you say you love something or someone, inclusively you appreciate them. So again, when Jesus says to love God, he's also saying to love everything, and then inclusive of that, we appreciate everything. So by loving God, you are hitting all these birds with all these stones. And it's just a really great shorthand. If a person can internalize what God is, what is the essence of God, what is the essence of universe or the spirit, they probably come to the idea that it's everything. Like, the universe, if that's what you want to call God, is literally everything. So when you come to the idea of loving the universe, you're loving everything. You're showing appreciation for everything, including yourself. And I think this is the biggest hurdle for most people. Self-love is really difficult. A lot of people have trouble looking in the mirror and saying, I love you, to the mirror, to yourself. A lot of people have trouble with that. But when you say love God and you understand what God truly is and that God is everything, including yourself, then in that very statement of saying you love God, you're also saying you're loving yourself. And if you truly believe that you love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, then you're also loving yourself. And that makes a lot of sense in Jesus' teachings, because he said, first love God, then love thy neighbor as you love thyself. There is no rule 1.5 that says love yourself. It's not love God, love yourself, and love your neighbor. It's love God, then love your neighbor as yourself. So basically, it's kind of like the first rule to love God includes yourself. Because Jesus didn't do a rule 1.5 and say love yourself. He skipped straight to loving your neighbors. Because it's like, if you love God, you love yourself. Technically, if you love God, you love your neighbors too. But maybe he wanted to like really throw in that, treat others as you would like to be treated, which makes a lot of sense because that rule does make a lot of sense. But he didn't say specifically to love yourself, because I think it's included in rule number 1. It's like Fight Club. What's the first rule of Fight Club? Everything is Fight Club. No, that's not the first rule of Fight Club. But when you say love God, you're loving everything. So, you know what? A lot of people already know this, but Jesus is a great teacher. Like, I think he's just shrunk everything. Like, instead of saying love this and love that and love the kitchen sink and everything, he just said love God. Because God is everything. God is you. You are God. You create through God. God creates through you. Everything, everyone, all the animals, the trees, the earth, whatever, is God. It's made of God's stuff, and God created everything. So, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do now is just try to love God. Just try to show appreciation for everything in my life, everything around the world, because it's perfect the way it is, because God created it. Like they say, God is up in his heaven, all is well in the world, right? So, yeah, that's it. I'm going to keep this one short. I actually have another video about God. If you're interested, you can look. I'll try to put it up like right here. So, this is the Spiritual Transformer, and I will see you next time. Bye for now. Peace.